The first shot shattered the wine glass in Peter's hand. For half a second, he thought it was just crystal breaking, the sharp, delicate sound of expensive glass surrendering under pressure. Then the second shot came, and the world tilted. The private dining room at Luna was drenched in warm amber light, all polished wood and quiet wealth. The kind of place where deals were signed with fountain pens and lives were rearranged over truffle risotto. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The air smelled of aged Barolo and garlic butter. Peter had been reaching across the table to refill a glass. That was when he saw it, a flicker of metal beneath a tailored sleeve. He didn't think. He moved. The third shot thundered through the room. Screams erupted. And by the fourth, Peter was already falling. 10 minutes earlier, the night had been perfectly ordinary. Peter Hale was 24, an Omega who worked double shifts at Luna 5 nights a week. He wore his black vest and pressed white shirt like armor. His life was a careful balancing act. Rent, hospital bills for his younger brother's asthma treatments, and a future that always seemed just one paycheck away. Table 12 is priority, Daniel had warned earlier that evening. Daniel was Luna's floor manager. Sharp suit, sharper tone. He had a habit of scanning the room like a general before battle. "That's Caruso," Daniel had muttered under his breath. No mistakes. Peter had followed Daniel's gaze. Axel Caruso. Even if you didn't read the business columns, and Peter didn't have time to, you knew that name. Shipping magnate. Investor. Philanthropist. The kind of man who appeared on magazine covers with headlines about dominance and expansion. He walked into Luna without raising his voice, without demanding attention. And yet the room shifted around him. Tall, broad-shouldered, black suit tailored to perfection. Dark hair slicked back just enough to look intentional. There was something restrained about him, like a storm contained inside bone and skin. Beside him walked a small boy in a miniature navy blazer. Romeo, 6 years old if Peter had to guess. The boy clutched a small wooden knight, a chess piece worn smooth by handling. They were led into the private upstairs room reserved for confidential meetings. Peter carried in the wine. That was when it happened, the small, human moment that would change everything. Romeo reached for his water. His elbow clipped the stem of a glass. Red wine spilled across the white tablecloth like blooming blood. Daniel inhaled sharply. "Careful," he snapped under his breath, already stepping forward. The boy froze. Peter reacted faster. "It's all right," Peter said gently, kneeling so he was eye level with Romeo. "Happens all the time. We'll fix it before your dad even notices." Romeo looked at him, wide eyes, more startled than spoiled. Peter dabbed the stain with a linen cloth. "It's just fabric," he added softly. "Nothing permanent." For a brief second, Peter felt it. The weight of someone watching. He looked up. Axel Caruso's eyes were on him. Not irritated. Not dismissive. Evaluating. Peter stood, bowed slightly, and retreated. He should have walked away. He should have never noticed the extra server who entered 5 minutes later. But Peter had worked at Luna long enough to recognize patterns. And that man did not belong. His collar sat wrong. His movements were stiff, not the fluid choreography of trained waitstaff. And he didn't wear a name tag. Peter felt something coil in his stomach. He approached the table with a fresh bottle of wine. That was when he saw it. Metal. Cold and black beneath a folded napkin. A suppressor. Time fractured. The quartet was still playing. Axel was mid-sentence. Romeo was reaching for bread. Peter dropped the bottle. It shattered across the marble floor. Axel's head snapped toward the sound. The first shot fired. Peter lunged. He didn't aim for the gunman. He aimed for the boy. He grabbed Romeo by the shoulders and threw both of them sideways beneath the heavy oak table. The second shot tore through Peter's upper arm. White-hot pain exploded. He didn't stop. The third bullet slammed into his abdomen. The force stole the air from his lungs. Romeo screamed. Peter wrapped himself around the child completely, curling over him like a shield. "Don't move," he gasped. The fourth shot hit his back. The impact felt like being struck by a sledgehammer. Then silence. Not true silence, but that eerie ringing vacuum after violence. Peter's vision blurred. He heard shouting, chairs overturning. Another gunshot, different rhythm, controlled. Axel. When Peter opened his eyes again, he was lying on the marble floor. Romeo was underneath him, alive. Small hands clutched the fabric of Peter's vest. "Papa!" Romeo cried. Peter tried to lift his head. He couldn't. Footsteps thundered across the room. Then Axel Caruso was there. Not the polished businessman. Not the controlled negotiator. Something else. Something raw. He pulled Peter's body off his son with shaking hands. "Romeo," Axel barked. "Are you hurt?" The boy shook his head violently. "It's not mine," he sobbed. "It's his." Axel's gaze dropped to Peter. For dark stains spreading across white fabric. For Peter tasted iron. The world dimmed at the edges. "You're going to stay awake," Axel ordered, voice low and dangerous. Not to Peter, but to the universe itself. Peter tried to laugh. Came out as a wet cough. "Kid's okay," he whispered. Axel stared at him, and something shifted. Not gratitude. Not yet. Recognition. Sirens wailed in the distance. Security flooded the hallway. Daniel stood frozen near the doorway, face drained of color, staring at the employee he'd nearly reprimanded an hour earlier. Peter's vision flickered. Axel leaned closer. For a brief second, their faces were inches apart. "You saw him," Axel said quietly. It wasn't a question. Peter nodded weakly. The gunman. Before the mask. He had seen his face. That mattered. Peter didn't understand why. He only knew the room was spinning. Axel's hand closed around his collar, steadying him. "Stay with me." The words weren't a command anymore. They were almost desperate. Peter's eyelids felt heavy. The last thing he saw before darkness swallowed him was Romeo reaching toward him, and Axel Caruso looking like a man who had just realized the cost of survival. Then everything went black. Peter didn't wake up to light. He woke up to pain. Not sharp. Not clean. Heavy. Like his body had been filled with molten iron and left to cool wrong. Sound came first. A low mechanical hum, steady beeping, distant footsteps. The air smelled sterile, expensive, filtered. Not a public hospital. His fingers twitched. Something tightened around his hand. "Don't." The voice was deep, controlled. "Close." Peter forced his eyes open. The ceiling above him wasn't the dull white of an ER ward. It was high, recessed, soft-lit. Private. His throat burned. He tried to swallow. A shadow shifted beside the bed. Axel Caruso sat in a chair too small for him. Elbows braced on his knees, shirt sleeves rolled up. The jacket was gone. So was the composed public image. There was dried blood along his cuff. Not his. Peter blinked slowly. "How long?" he croaked. 10 hours, Axel replied. "No embellishment. No softness. You lost a lot of blood. They removed 1 bullet from your back, 1 from your abdomen. The one in your arm went clean through." Peter processed that slowly. He remembered 4. "And the 4th?" he asked. Axel's jaw tightened. "It missed your spine by less than a centimeter." Silence. Peter let out a breath that trembled despite himself. "Kid." Axel's expression shifted just barely. "He's alive." A pause. "He hasn't stopped asking about you." Something inside Peter eased. He tried to sit up. Instant regret. Pain detonated through his abdomen. Axel stood immediately, one hand bracing Peter's shoulder. "I said don't." There was command in it. But beneath that, fear. Peter noticed it, and that surprised him more than the bullets. "Why am I here?" Peter whispered. "Not where." Axel held his gaze for a long moment. "You saw his face." Peter's heart skipped. The gunman. Before the mask came up. Yes. Axel nodded once. He wasn't working alone. The air in the room felt heavier. There was someone inside, Axel continued. Someone who provided the room layout, the security timing, the seating chart. Peter felt cold despite the hospital warmth. If I go home, he said quietly, you won't make it to morning. The words were delivered flat. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Fact. Peter swallowed again. My brother is under protection. Peter's head snapped toward him. Axel didn't look away. I already sent 2 men to your apartment building. No one gets near your floor. You don't even know him, Peter said. I don't need to. Axel stepped closer to the bed. You stepped in front of 4 bullets for my son. His voice dropped lower. Don't mistake me for ungrateful. There it was. The first crack in the steel. Peter studied him properly now. No tie. No suit jacket. Hair slightly disordered. A man who had not left the room. You've been here the whole time? Peter asked. Axel didn't answer immediately. Yes. Something unspoken settled between them. Peter's chest felt tight, not from injury. You don't lose things easily, do you? Peter murmured. Axel's gaze sharpened. I don't lose anything. A beat. I refuse to. There was history in that statement. Something darker. Peter didn't press. Instead, he asked the question that mattered. So what happens now? Axel straightened slightly. You don't leave. Peter's jaw clenched. I have a job. Daniel will hold it. You spoke to him? Yes. That startled Peter. He was shaken, Axel added. Of course he was. Daniel had watched his employee collapse in blood. I can't just disappear, Peter said. You won't, Axel replied calmly. You'll recover at my residence. Residence. Not house. Not home. Peter studied him again. You're not asking. No. Honesty. Brutal and clean. Peter closed his eyes briefly. This isn't protection, he said softly. This is containment. Axel didn't deny it. It's both. The monitor beside Peter beeped steadily. Peter opened his eyes again. And when you find the inside man? I will. No hesitation. What then? Axel's voice lowered. Then you'll be safe. Peter searched his face. And if I don't want to live under your roof? Axel leaned in slightly, close enough that Peter could see the faint scar along his jawline. You think I want an Omega in my house who can't stand yet? He asked quietly. That stung. Peter bristled. Axel continued before the silence could curdle. But I want you dead even less. There it was again. Not obligation. Not strategy. Something personal. Peter exhaled slowly. You're used to controlling outcomes. Yes. And if I refuse? Axel's eyes darkened. You won't. The certainty made Peter angry. But also, strangely safe. A knock interrupted them. The door opened slightly. Romeo slipped in before anyone could stop him. His blazer was gone. He wore a simple hoodie now. He froze at the sight of Peter awake. Papa, he whispered. Axel turned immediately. You shouldn't be here. Romeo ignored him. He walked carefully to the bedside. Peter saw it then, the guilt in the child's eyes. I didn't mean to, Romeo said softly. Peter's heart twisted. You didn't do anything, Peter murmured. Romeo reached out hesitantly, touching the blanket near Peter's hand. You were bleeding a lot. Peter managed a faint smile. Occupational hazard. Romeo frowned. Axel watched them both in silence. And something in his expression shifted again. Something softer. Romeo leaned closer. Are you going to stay? He asked Peter. Axel stiffened almost imperceptibly. Peter looked from the boy to the man beside him. This wasn't just about bullets anymore. This was about what happened after. Peter swallowed. For a little while, he said carefully. Romeo nodded as if that was enough. Axel didn't speak, but the tension in his shoulders eased. A nurse entered moments later, gently ushering Romeo out. The door closed. Silence returned. Axel looked at Peter again. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he said quietly. Peter studied him. "You think you can control everything." Axel's jaw flexed. "I control what I can. And the rest." Axel's eyes met his. "I eliminate." Peter held his gaze. "Not everything can be eliminated." A long pause. Then Axel said something unexpected. "I know." It was the first admission of limitation. Peter felt it like a shift in gravity. Outside the window, night pressed against the glass. Inside the room, something else had begun. Not romance. Not yet. But recognition. Axel Caruso didn't lose things. And for the first time in a long time, he was afraid of losing someone he hadn't even meant to keep. The Caruso estate did not look like a home. It looked like a statement. Steel gates, limestone walls, windows too tall to feel welcoming. The driveway curved like something designed to slow intruders rather than impress guests. Even the silence felt deliberate. Peter watched it through the tinted window of the SUV, pain pulsing faintly under layers of medication. He wasn't strong enough to argue anymore. But he was strong enough to notice. "You built a fortress," he muttered. Beside him, Axel didn't look up from his phone. "I built security." "That's not the same thing." Axel glanced at him then. A brief, unreadable look, before the vehicle rolled to a stop beneath the covered entrance. The door opened. Cold evening air rushed in. Peter tried to move on his own. His body disagreed. Axel stepped forward without asking and slid one arm behind Peter's back, the other beneath his knees. "I can walk," Peter protested weakly. "No," Axel replied. He lifted him anyway. Peter stiffened at first. Instinct, pride, stubbornness, but pain made resistance pointless. He let himself be carried up the steps. Axel didn't struggle. Not even slightly. Inside, the estate was all dark marble and muted lighting. Clean lines. No clutter. No warmth. But there were signs of a child. A chessboard set up near the fireplace. A small jacket tossed over the back of a chair. Romeo stood at the base of the staircase, watching anxiously. "Careful," the boy whispered. Axel's hold tightened almost imperceptibly. "I've got him." Peter felt that through bone and muscle, that certainty. They carried him up to a bedroom on the east wing. Not the master suite, but not a guest room either. Large windows, soft lighting, a hospital-grade adjustable bed already installed. Subtle security camera in the upper corner. "You planned this fast," Peter murmured as Axel lowered him carefully onto the bed. "I adapt fast." That much was obvious. A private doctor entered minutes later, checking sutures, monitoring vitals, adjusting medication levels. Efficient. Quiet. When they were finally alone, the door closing with a soft click, Peter exhaled slowly. "So this is my cage." Axel stood near the window, hands in his pockets. "You're not locked in. There are cameras. For your protection." Peter gave him a look. Same difference. Axel walked closer, stopping beside the bed. "You want honesty?" he asked. "Yes. You are safest where I can see you." There was no threat in it. No possessiveness. Just fact. Peter studied him. "You're not used to someone almost dying because of you." Axel's jaw flexed. "It wasn't because of me. It was because of your world." Silence. That hit. Peter hadn't meant it cruelly. But it landed that way. Axel turned away briefly, staring out the window at the dark lawn below. "My world keeps my son alive," he said quietly. It almost didn't. The words lingered between them like smoke. A knock interrupted the tension. "Romeo." He slipped inside without waiting. He held the wooden chess knight in one hand. "You forgot this," he said softly, placing it on the bedside table beside Peter. Peter smiled faintly. "Thanks." Romeo climbed onto the edge of the mattress carefully. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "Yes." Peter answered honestly. Romeo nodded solemnly, as if pain made him trustworthy. Axel watched the interaction without speaking. Something in his expression softened again, that crack in the armor widening just slightly. After Romeo was guided out for dinner, the room felt larger. Too quiet. Peter shifted carefully. Pain flared, but manageable. Axel noticed instantly. You shouldn't move without assistance. You're not my nurse. Axel's gaze darkened faintly. No. A beat. I'm not. The air thickened. Peter became acutely aware of proximity, of how close Axel stood, of how the room carried his scent. Clean soap, cedar, something deeper underneath. Peter swallowed. You don't have to hover. Axel didn't step back. You took 4 bullets. You didn't. A pause. Axel leaned slightly closer, bracing one hand on the bed rail. I would have. The words were low, unpolished. Peter's breath caught. That wasn't ego. That wasn't bravado. That was truth. And if you had? Peter asked quietly. Axel's eyes locked onto his. Then you wouldn't be here. The implication was clear. Axel would not have survived that loss. Not emotionally. Peter felt something shift inside him. Something dangerous. You don't even know me, Peter whispered. Axel didn't look away. I know enough. The distance between them was minimal now. Too minimal. Peter could feel the warmth radiating from Axel's body. Could see the faint stubble along his jaw. Could sense the tension held carefully in his shoulders. Neither moved. Neither retreated. Finally, Peter spoke first. You're trying very hard not to touch me. Axel's hand tightened on the bed rail. Yes. Why? Because you're injured. Not the full answer. Peter could see that. And if I wasn't? That changed the air. Completely. Axel's gaze dropped briefly to Peter's mouth, then back to his eyes. You're under my protection, he said carefully. That's not what I asked. A long silence. Then Axel stepped back. Just one step. You need rest. Coward. Or controlled. Peter wasn't sure which, but he watched Axel walk to the door. Hand on the handle. If someone comes near this wing, Axel said without turning, they won't leave. That wasn't dramatic. It was promise. The door closed softly. Peter lay back against the pillows. His body hurt. His future was uncertain. And yet, for the first time since the gunshots, he didn't feel alone. Outside in the hallway, Axel paused. He pressed his palm briefly against the cool wall, steadying himself. Because the truth was this. Axel Caruso did not bring strangers into his home. He did not let vulnerabilities breathe under his roof. And he definitely did not stand inches from an Omega's mouth wondering what it would feel like to close the distance. Control had always been his strength. Now it felt fragile. Inside the room, Peter reached for the wooden chess knight. He turned it over in his fingers. A piece meant to move in unexpected patterns. He had stepped into Axel's world by accident. But something told him the real danger hadn't been the bullets. It was what was beginning now. The alarm went off at 2:17 a.m. It wasn't loud. It was worse. A low, vibrating pulse that rolled through the walls like something alive. Peter woke instantly. Pain followed a second later, sharp and grounding, reminding him exactly where he was. The East Wing, under Axel Caruso's roof. The lights in the room shifted from warm to a dim amber security mode. Footsteps thundered down the hallway, voices in hushed, urgent tones. Peter pushed himself up despite the protest from his stitches. His pulse was racing before his mind caught up. Then he heard it. A child's voice. Papa. Romeo. Not screaming, but awake. Peter didn't think. He swung his legs over the side of the bed. The floor felt too far away. His knees trembled. He gritted his teeth and forced himself upright. The bedroom door burst open. Axel stepped inside, fully awake, fully alert, a gun already in his hand. He froze for half a second when he saw Peter standing. "What are you doing?" Axel demanded in a low, lethal voice. "Romeo's awake." Axel's jaw tightened. "You shouldn't be on your feet. And he shouldn't be alone." Another pulse of the alarm vibrated through the walls. Axel stepped forward, gripping Peter's arm firmly. Not harsh, but unyielding. "Back to bed." "No." The word surprised both of them. Axel stared at him. Peter held his gaze. He heard the alarm. "He'll think it's happening again." The word again hung between them. Axel hesitated. Just long enough. A voice crackled over his earpiece. "South perimeter breach. One intruder down. Searching for a second." Peter felt the temperature in the room drop. "Second." Axel's eyes sharpened. "You stay here," he ordered. Peter shook his head. "I won't." That was when something shifted. Axel didn't argue again. He holstered the gun at his back and slid one arm around Peter's waist instead. "Then you don't move without me." They moved together down the hallway. Peter leaned more weight on Axel than he would ever admit. But Axel didn't comment. When they reached Romeo's room, the door was slightly ajar. Axel entered first. Romeo sat upright in bed, clutching the wooden knight. His face was pale. "Is it bad?" he asked quietly. Axel's voice softened instantly. "No." It wasn't a lie. Not yet. Peter stepped inside slowly. Romeo's eyes locked onto him. "You shouldn't be walking," the boy whispered. Peter managed a faint smile. "Neither should you be awake." Romeo gave a small, shaky breath of a laugh. The alarm stopped abruptly. Silence returned, heavy, unnatural. Axel's phone buzzed. He checked it. "Both intruders neutralized," he said calmly. Peter felt his heartbeat slow slightly. "Neutralized," Romeo repeated quietly. Axel glanced at his son. "Handled," he corrected. Romeo nodded, though his grip on the chess piece didn't loosen. Peter stepped closer to the bed. Carefully, slowly, he reached out. "Can I sit?" he asked. Romeo nodded. Axel moved to protest, then stopped himself. Peter lowered himself beside the boy with visible effort. Romeo leaned against him instinctively. Axel watched. The scene was simple, domestic, and yet it struck something deep inside him. "Tell me something boring," Romeo whispered. Peter blinked. "What?" "Papa says boring things make your brain calm down." Axel exhaled faintly. Peter considered. "Okay," he said softly. "Did you know octopuses have 3 hearts?" Romeo frowned slightly. "That's not boring." "It is if you're an octopus," Peter countered. Romeo snorted. And just like that, tension cracked. Axel stood near the door, arms folded, watching both of them like something fragile he didn't fully understand. After a few minutes, Romeo's breathing evened out. Peter waited until he was sure, then tried to stand. His legs nearly gave out. Axel caught him immediately. Stronger this time. Closer. "You're done walking tonight," Axel murmured against his temple. Peter's breath caught. They were alone now. The room dim. The hallway silent. "You had 2 intruders," Peter said quietly. "Yes. In a fortress." Axel's jaw flexed. "They won't try again." "That's not what worries me." Axel looked at him. "What does?" Peter's fingers tightened slightly in Axel's shirt. "That someone knew how to get in." The words landed. Axel's gaze darkened. "That someone still does." Silence. Axel stepped closer. Too close. Peter's back brushed the wall. "You shouldn't have left your bed," Axel said quietly. "You shouldn't think you can protect everything alone." That hit deeper than Peter expected. Axel's hand was still at Peter's waist. Solid. Warm. "Don't do that," Axel said softly. "Do what?" "Act like your life isn't fragile right now." Peter's chest rose and fell faster. "It's fragile because of your world." Axel leaned in slightly. "And you stepped into it anyway." "I stepped in front of a child." Their faces were inches apart. The tension wasn't about danger anymore. It was about proximity, breath, choice. "You scare me," Peter admitted suddenly. Axel didn't move. "Good. That's not what I meant." Peter's hand shifted from Axel's shirt to his collar. "You scare me because you look like you'd burn the world down and not blink." Axel's voice lowered. "I would. For him. Yes. A beat. And for me." That question changed everything. Axel's restraint cracked. Just a little. His hand slid from Peter's waist to the back of his neck. Firm. Not rough. But claiming. "You shouldn't ask questions you already know the answer to," Axel murmured. Peter didn't retreat. Didn't break eye contact. "Then show me." That was the last line of control. Axel kissed him. Not soft. Not hesitant. But not violent either. It was heat held back for days. Frustration. Fear. Relief. Peter inhaled sharply against Axel's mouth. Axel's hand tightened, anchoring him. Peter's fingers curled into Axel's shirt. The kiss deepened, slower, deliberate, testing boundaries. When Peter's body tensed from pain, Axel pulled back immediately, breathing heavy, forehead resting against Peter's. "I will not hurt you," Axel said quietly. "I know." Another pause. Another choice. This time Peter closed the distance again. Softer. Slower. When they finally separated, both were breathing harder than they should have been. Axel brushed his thumb along Peter's jaw. "You're not leaving this wing again tonight." Peter gave a faint smile. "Bossy. Alive." Footsteps approached down the hallway. Reality returned. Axel stepped back first this time, rebuilding control. But something had changed. Peter felt it. Axel felt it. The fortress had been breached tonight. Not just by intruders, but by something far more dangerous. And far more irreversible. The betrayal didn't come with shouting. Came with silence. Axel stood in the security room at 6:42 a.m., eyes fixed on a wall of monitors replaying the breach from 3 angles. The estate was awake but quiet. Staff moving carefully. Guards doubling shifts. Tension threaded into the air like static before lightning. Peter was supposed to be resting. Instead, he was sitting in the chair beside Axel, pale but stubbornly alert. "You should be lying down," Axel said without looking at him. "You should stop saying that," Peter replied calmly. On screen, the first intruder scaled the south wall. Professional. Efficient. The second had entered through the service driveway. That part made Axel's jaw tighten. "They bypassed the outer motion grid for 12 seconds, Peter murmured. Axel's eyes flicked toward him. "How do you know that?" Peter pointed. "Look at the timestamp shift. The camera lag is manual. Not system failure." Axel replayed it. Peter was right. 12 seconds of intentional blindness. "That's internal access," Axel said quietly. "Yes." Silence fell heavy between them. Someone inside the estate. Not a random breach. Not an opportunistic strike. Calculated. Axel straightened slowly. "Call Marcus," he ordered one of the guards. Marcus Hale was his head of security. Loyal for 6 years. Former military. Clean record. Too clean. Peter watched Axel carefully. "You trust him," Peter said softly. "I trusted him." That shift in tense mattered. Marcus arrived 10 minutes later. Calm. Unbothered. He greeted Axel with a firm nod. 2 intruders down. Both external contractors, Marcus reported. No internal compromise. Axel studied him without speaking. Peter watched Marcus's hands. Steady. Too steady. "You were on shift rotation approval last night," Axel said evenly. "Yes." "You approved the temporary tech crew last week." "Yes." Axel's voice dropped slightly. "Why was the motion grid offline for 12 seconds? Marcus didn't blink. "It wasn't." Peter leaned forward. "It was." Marcus's gaze shifted to him for the first time. Briefly dismissive. "You're injured," Marcus said. "Rest." That was the wrong thing to say. Peter held his stare. Camera 3 lagged. 12 seconds. Manual override. Only someone with internal credentials could have done that. Marcus smiled faintly. You've been here 3 days. And I almost died here 3 days ago. The room tightened. Axel didn't move. But something in his posture changed. Predatory stillness. Answer the question, Axel said quietly. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Glitch, he replied. Axel walked closer. Not aggressive. Not loud. Worse. You've served me for 6 years, Axel said. So I'm going to give you one chance. Marcus's eyes sharpened. Sir. Axel stopped inches away from him. If you're lying to me, you'll wish the intruders had killed you. No raised voice. No theatrics. Just certainty. For half a second, Marcus hesitated. That was enough. Axel saw it. Peter saw it. Marcus moved first. His hand went toward his ankle holster. Axel was faster. The gunshot inside the security room was deafening. Marcus dropped. A clean shot to the shoulder. Guards swarmed instantly. Disarmed. Pinned. Marcus's face twisted, not in pain. In anger. You think you can protect him? Marcus spat toward Peter. You brought him into this house. Axel's eyes went cold. I brought him into this house because you tried to kill my son. Marcus laughed weakly. Not kill. Break you. There it was. Truth. Axel crouched in front of him. You failed. Marcus's expression darkened. You can't guard everything, Caruso. You have a weakness now. His gaze flicked to Peter. Axel stood. Take him, he ordered. Marcus was dragged from the room. The silence afterward felt heavier than the gunshot. Peter realized his hands were trembling. Not from fear. From delayed shock. Axel turned toward him. Are you hurt? It was automatic. The question. Peter shook his head. You shot him without hesitation. Yes. For 6 years of loyalty. Axel's gaze hardened slightly. He pointed a weapon inside my house. Peter swallowed. This is your world. Yes. And I'm in it now. Axel stepped closer. You were already in it the second you pushed Romeo down. Peter looked up at him. There was no softness in Axel's expression now. Just resolve. Marcus wasn't the top, Axel continued. He was working under someone. How do you know? Because he hesitated. Peter absorbed that. So it's not over. No. A beat. It's escalating. Peter's pulse quickened. And I'm still the witness. Yes. The honesty between them had become almost brutal. Peter stood slowly despite his body's protest. Axel moved instinctively to steady him. Peter didn't pull away this time. I don't want to be a liability, Peter said quietly. You're not. I'm the reason he said you have a weakness. Axel's expression shifted, something darker, more personal. You think you're the weakness? Yes. Axel stepped closer. Close enough that Peter had to tilt his head back slightly. You're not the weakness, Axel said quietly. You're the reason I won't lose. Peter's breath caught. Axel's hand lifted, not to restrain, not to command, but to cradle the side of Peter's face. You think I shot him because I'm ruthless? Axel murmured. Peter didn't answer. I shot him because he put you in danger. The air between them changed. Peter felt it like a slow-burning spark. You shouldn't say things like that, Peter whispered. Why? Because I'll start believing them. Axel's thumb brushed lightly along Peter's jaw. Good. There it was again. That dangerous heat. Not born of adrenaline this time, but choice. Footsteps approached down the hall. Reality pressing back in. Axel stepped away first, reassembling control. Security will double on this wing, he said calmly. Peter watched him. You don't trust anyone now. Axel didn't look at him. I trust you. That landed harder than the confession before. Peter stood there, heart pounding, body still healing. For bullets. One traitor exposed. Another enemy waiting. And in the middle of it all, something growing that neither of them had planned. And neither of them could eliminate. The house was quieter after Marcus was taken away. Too quiet. Security doubled. Rotations changed. Every guard now walked with suspicion in their eyes. But inside the East Wing, silence carried something else. Awareness. Peter stood at the window that evening, watching the sky fade into deep blue over the estate grounds. His body still ached, sharp reminders stitched beneath skin, but the pain felt distant compared to the weight pressing on his chest. He heard Axel before he saw him, measured footsteps, controlled, always controlled. "You should be resting," Axel said from behind him. Peter didn't turn. "I'm tired of hearing that." A pause. Then softer. "You're pushing yourself." Peter exhaled slowly. "I need to feel like I'm not just recovering." Axel stepped closer. Not touching, but close enough that Peter felt the heat at his back. "You're not just recovering. What am I then?" Axel didn't answer immediately. The air thickened between them. "You're the reason my son sleeps," Axel said quietly. "You're the reason I almost lost him." Peter turned sharply at that. Axel's jaw tightened. "That's not what I meant." "I know." Silence. The kind that vibrated. Peter stepped closer instead of away this time. "Marcus said I was your weakness." Axel's gaze darkened. "Marcus was a traitor. That doesn't mean he was wrong." Axel closed the distance in one step. His hands landed on Peter's waist, firm, grounding. "You are not my weakness." Peter's pulse spiked. "Then what am I?" Axel held his gaze. "A choice." That word hit harder than any confession. Peter swallowed. "You don't make choices lightly." "No." "And you're choosing me?" Axel's grip tightened slightly. "Yes." No hesitation. No strategy. Just truth. Peter's breath grew uneven. "You don't know what that means," he whispered. Axel leaned closer. "I know exactly what it means." His hand slid slowly upward, from waist to the curve of Peter's back, stopping just below the line of healing stitches. Careful. Deliberate. "You were bleeding out on a marble floor," Axel said quietly. "And the only thing I could think was that I was not losing you." Peter's heart pounded so hard it hurt. "You barely knew me." "I know enough." Axel's thumb brushed just under Peter's jaw, lifting his chin slightly. Peter didn't pull away. "Say it again," Peter whispered. Axel's voice dropped to a low murmur. "I am not losing you." That broke something open. Peter kissed him. Not tentative. Not testing. Hungry. Axel responded instantly. One arm wrapping firmly around Peter's back, the other sliding into his hair. The kiss deepened fast. Heat layered over tension. Peter's fingers tangled into Axel's shirt, pulling him closer. Axel backed him gently against the wall. Not trapping, but anchoring. Their mouths moved slower now, deliberate, tasting, memorizing. Peter felt dizzy, not from pain but from the intensity. Axel pulled back first, breathing heavier, eyes darker. "You're still healing," Axel said, voice rougher than before. Peter stepped forward again. "I'm not fragile." Axel's hand slipped down Peter's side, tracing the line of his waist. "You are to me." The honesty in that sentence made Peter shiver. Axel leaned down, pressing a slow kiss to the corner of Peter's mouth, then his jaw, then lower, stopping carefully above the line of bandages. Peter inhaled sharply. Axel froze instantly. "Does that hurt?" "No." Peter's fingers curled into Axel's shoulders. "Don't stop because you're afraid." Axel looked up at him. "I'm not afraid." "Yes, you are." A long pause. Axel's forehead rested against Peter's. "I don't trust myself with things I care about." Peter softened slightly at that. "You don't break what you care about," he said quietly. Axel's hands slid up Peter's back again. Slow, controlled, almost reverent. "I don't want to rush this," Axel murmured. Peter searched his face. This isn't rush. It feels like fire. Peter smiled faintly. Maybe it is. Axel kissed him again, slower this time. Deep, intimate. No urgency now. Just connection. When Axel's hand brushed the edge of Peter's hip bone, Peter felt heat coil low in his stomach. It would have been easy to let it escalate. Easy to forget stitches and danger and enemies. But Axel pulled back again, breathing controlled with visible effort. Not tonight, he said quietly. Peter blinked. You're stopping? Yes. Why? Axel brushed his thumb along Peter's lower lip. Because when I have you, he said, voice low and steady, I want you whole. Peter stared at him. That wasn't restraint. That was intention. The difference mattered. Outside the room, distant footsteps echoed, guards changing shifts. Reality waited. But inside the East Wing, something had already shifted beyond return. Peter stepped back just enough to look at Axel fully. This isn't just protection anymore, he said softly. No. And it's not obligation. No. Peter exhaled slowly. Then what is it? Axel held his gaze. It's what I choose. Peter's throat tightened unexpectedly. He hadn't realized how much he needed to hear that. Axel brushed his lips once more against Peter's, softer now. Almost a promise. We end this, Axel said quietly. The one above Marcus. The one pulling the strings. And then, Axel looked at him in a way that stripped away every layer of control. And then I ask you to stay. Peter felt heat rise to his face. You're assuming I will. Axel's eyes darkened slightly. I don't assume. He leaned in, voice brushing Peter's ear. I persuade. Peter laughed softly, breathless. For the first time since the gunshots, the fear felt secondary. There were still enemies. Still danger. Still blood on marble floors waiting somewhere in the future. But tonight, they weren't running from it. They were choosing each other despite it. And that was far more dangerous than any intruder scaling a wall. The call came at dawn. Axel was already awake. He hadn't slept much. Not since Marcus's betrayal. Not since the breach. Not since Peter had stepped fully into the space between protection and something far more dangerous. His phone vibrated once. Encrypted line. Only 3 people had it. Now 2. Axel answered without greeting. A distorted voice came through. You're losing your edge, Caruso. Axel didn't react. I removed your edge, the voice continued calmly. For bullets weren't enough. Peter stirred in the bed behind him. Axel stepped into the hallway before replying. You won't get another chance. A soft laugh crackled through the speaker. Oh, I will. The call ended. Axel stared at the dark screen for half a second before moving. Fast. Decisive. By 7:30 a.m., the estate was in motion. The name behind Marcus surfaced within hours. Leon Vescari, a competitor in maritime routes. Quiet, patient, known for indirect warfare. He hadn't wanted Axel dead. He'd wanted him unstable. A grieving father. A distracted leader. Marcus had been the access point. The intruders the pressure. Peter the unexpected variable. You ruined his timing, Axel told Peter later that morning. They stood in the security room again. This time Peter leaned against the desk rather than sitting. He was healing, but still pale. So what now? Peter asked. Axel met his gaze. Now we end it. They didn't storm Vescari's compound. Axel didn't believe in theatrics. He believed in control. Vescari was lured instead. A business meeting. Neutral ground. A restaurant overlooking the harbor. Irony wasn't lost on either of them. Peter insisted on going. No, Axel had said immediately. Yes. You're still recovering. And this started because I was there. Axel's eyes hardened. It escalated because you were there. Peter stepped closer. I won't hide while you fight something tied to me. Axel studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. You stay beside me. The restaurant was closed for the meeting. Minimal staff. Private floor. Axel arrived first. Peter at his side. Romeo safely at the estate with triple security. Vescary arrived 10 minutes later. Impeccable suit. Silver hair. Smiling like nothing had happened. Axel, he greeted warmly. Tragic misunderstanding. Axel didn't sit. For bullets is not a misunderstanding. Vescary's gaze shifted briefly to Peter. So this is the Omega. Axel's hand slid possessively, deliberately, to the small of Peter's back. Yes. Peter felt it. Not ownership. Positioning. Vescary smiled faintly. You destabilized my strategy, he said conversationally. I miscalculated. You tried to kill a child, Peter said evenly. Vescary's eyes flicked toward him, assessing. And you tried to be heroic. Silence stretched. Axel leaned forward slightly. This ends now. Vescary chuckled. You think removing Marcus stopped the machine? Axel's voice went cold. No. A subtle motion. Guards stepped into the room behind Vescary. Not Axel's. Not Vescary's. Federal. Vescary's smile faltered for the first time. You've always preferred the long game, Axel said calmly. So do I. Vescary's financial ties, offshore accounts, and hired contractors had already been quietly exposed overnight. Not by accident. Axel didn't burn the world. He dismantled it. You wouldn't, Vescary hissed. I already did. The doors closed behind Vescary as he was escorted out. No gunfire. No drama. Just inevitability. Peter exhaled slowly. It's over. For now, Axel replied. Peter turned toward him. You didn't kill him. No. Why? Axel's gaze softened slightly. Because Romeo doesn't need another story about blood. The weight of that settled between them. They stood by the harbor window after the room cleared. The city waking beyond glass. You could have handled this without me here, Peter said quietly. Yes. Then why let me come? Axel turned fully toward him. Because I'm done making decisions that don't include you. That hit deeper than any gunshot had. Peter swallowed. You don't owe me inclusion. I'm not repaying a debt. Axel stepped closer. The noise of the city faded behind them. I told you before, Axel said softly. You're not my weakness. Peter held his gaze. Then what am I? Axel reached up, fingers brushing gently along Peter's jaw. My future. The word hung there. Unarmored. Peter's chest tightened. You're not subtle, he murmured. I'm not uncertain. Peter searched his face. No hesitation. No calculation. Just intent. Say it, Axel said quietly. Peter's heart pounded. I choose you. Axel exhaled. Something like relief threading through it. He kissed Peter slowly. No urgency this time. No adrenaline. Just certainty. When they pulled apart, Peter rested his forehead briefly against Axel's. And Romeo? Peter asked softly. Axel's expression warmed in a way few ever saw. He's been asking if you're staying. Peter smiled faintly. I'm not going anywhere. Axel's hand settled at his waist again. Steady. Grounded. Good. Outside, ships moved through the harbor. Life continued. Deals would be made again. Enemies would rise. Danger would exist. But something fundamental had shifted. For bullets had torn through flesh. But they hadn't broken what mattered. They had clarified it. Axel Caruso did not lose what he chose to keep. And this time, he was choosing love. Back at the estate that evening, Romeo ran toward them the second they stepped inside. You're back. Peter knelt carefully, ignoring the lingering ache. Romeo threw his arms around him. Axel watched them both. Not as a man guarding assets. Not as a strategist assessing risk. But as someone who had nearly lost everything. And refused to again. Peter looked up at Axel over Romeo's shoulder. No more fear in his eyes. Only decision. Axel met that gaze. And for the first time in years, The fortress didn't feel like a prison. Felt like home. For bullets were meant to shatter a family. Instead, they built one. Peter stepped into Axel's world by accident, but he stayed by choice. Not because he needed protection. Not because he owed a debt. But because love, once chosen, is stronger than fear. And Axel, a man who never allowed himself weaknesses, learned